Well, hey, welcome to Talking Texas Politics with Calvin. I'm here today at the Cooke County GOP headquarters with the Cooke County GOP Chair, Chris McNamara. So, Chris, first, let me thank you for joining us today. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to become the GOP Chair for Cooke County?
Sure. It all started in 1984. And God said, "Let there be Chris." Here I am. Now, born in Gainesville, will die in Gainesville. I love this community. And for me, it's about giving back to a community that gave so much to me. And really, probably it goes back 15 years ago when I was about to get married. And I come home one day and there's a barbecue grill sitting on my back porch. And I'm like, "Well, what's this?" And Emily, my wife, she says, "Oh, that must be from Bob." And I said, "Well, who the heck's Bob?" "Well, Bob Eggleston. He's a friend of my grandpa's." And I said, "Oh, well, that's really nice." We get married, not soon, pretty soon after. In the mail comes a postcard inviting us to this young Republican get together. And I'm like, whatever. And my wife says, "Well, we have to go." And I said, "Well, why do we have to go?" "Well, because that's Bob. He's the chairman." And I said, "Oh, well, I don't really want to go." And I learned a couple valuable lessons through this. I said, "We'll just give the grill back." But, long story short, I went to the meeting and I also learned something about marriage. So that's how it's kind of worked. But that kind of got me my start. And I was a precinct chair after that, after the Young Republicans, and just kind of worked my way through it and ended up here.
Yeah. Now, you also work right here in Cooke County. And so how long have you been the county chair?
County chair, probably about 10 years now, just coming up on 10 years, I think.
So in that time, is there any particular accomplishments that you're proud of, that you're glad that made it worth the effort and energy that you spend?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is sustaining the party and fundraising, and that's hard. And so, we do an annual fund shoot, and we just had our latest one. Looks like that may be one of our most successful ones. And so, keeping the doors open and keeping the party running, and to some extent building a war chest for what may happen in the future or to help support our candidates is really important. And we're doing really well with that and with the support. We're still an all Republican county, and so that means we're doing something right. So it's a lot of it's just sustaining the party, building relationships, doing good work in the community, being a part of the community, um, and it's going well, I think.
So what are some of the activities that you do here in the community to help the community?
Yeah, so as far as community wise, we try to show up at community events, and so where we can, where it's appropriate, because politics aren't always appropriate, but we try to make an annual donation to a nonprofit that is in line with our goals and our beliefs. We show up and participate at Depot Day to further the message of the party, to meet with people, to be out in the community. Obviously, during elections, we're the place where you get the signs and swag and different things for the elections. And so we, try to do those things to obviously promote our candidates and get them elected.
So what are some of the ways that you help candidates here in Cooke County?
Yeah, so the party has a couple different roles, and so there's the political side and there's the statutory, the legal side. And so from a political standpoint, it's supporting the candidate, handing out their signs. We work hand in hand with the Republican women for candidate forums, um, donations, things of that nature. From a statutory side, it's making sure that there is a Republican primary. We work hand in hand with the county clerk for that. we have our hands in everything as far, election judges, early voting ballot board selections. I serve on the county election board. So really, everything to make sure there is a Republican primary, and then supporting the candidate through it, making sure the candidates are following the rules, making sure that anything they need to get on the ballot, which I'm the filing authority. So if you want to be a Republican candidate in Cooke County, you apply to me to do that. But then my job is to get you through the process. Sometimes it's one's complaining about the other. This person's doing this, and this, trying to be the peacemaker there and help everybody get along. But most importantly, to make sure they get through the process, they get through it correctly and legally. That way, if there were to be someone in the other party, nobody's challenged or kicked off the ballot for some reason that's some silly technicality, basically.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that sounds like that could be very helpful.
Yeah, that's the busy time for sure, and there's not a lot of time between one primary and the other. By the time you finish all the finance reports and all the things you owe the state, you've got less than a year before you're starting up the next cycle. November will start up the next filing season.
Yeah. So you've been the chair here for 10 years. I assume you plan on doing that well into the future.
I take it one day at a time. So, the party's made up of me, and then also what's called the county executive committee, which are precinct chairs. So all of the 15 election precincts each have a representative, and that kind of makes up the board of directors, if you will, for the party. And our term is, it's a 2-year term, starts in June. And so it's June to June every other year. So, I'll have to run again in November. I don't see that I won't, but you never know, one day at a time.
I understand.
Every election gets a little more stressful.
Well, now have you had an opponent? Has there been anybody who've actively?
No, I've never had an opponent, even though it pays so well. So, yeah, it's you get all the work and none of the pay. But like I say, for me, it's for trying to do something for the community and to help give back in some way. Leave it better than you found it, kind of a thing.
So, if you were to continue on in this role, what's some of the things you would like to see done in the future?
Yeah, that's a hard one. A lot of what I do is from an administrative function, and I rely, greatly on all the volunteers. That's the precinct chairs, the Republican women group. I couldn't do it without them, and we're all getting a little older, and we need younger people to get involved. When I started this, I was in my 20s, and now I'm married, 3 kids, and getting gray hair. So, we do need younger people to get involved to help further the party and the ideals of the party for sure. The more volunteers we have, the more we can do.
So, here in Cooke County, as you mentioned, it's a pretty solid red county at this point. All of our elected countywide officials are Republicans. We have had some controversy over the years over monuments and things like that. What do you think is the biggest challenge that Cooke County is facing over, say, the next 5 years?
I think in general, our biggest problem is just division, and that really is probably a Republican Party problem. One thing I always I talk about is Democrats, no matter how terrible their legislation may be, they will stick together and they will get it done. Republicans like to fight with each other, and that's okay because everybody's got different ideas, but in the end, sometimes we have a hard time getting together on things, and I think that's our, unity is our biggest problem in the party. Locally, we're pretty fortunate that we are all Republican, and for the most part, we do come together to get things done, even when these controversial issues come up. We do stick together, and we get through it. I mean, talking to other parties and counties around us, they don't get along quite as well, and they've got that infighting problem, and that's gonna if they don't get a handle on that, that's gonna be their downfall, or their issue. But we're doing really good in Cooke County with that. Cooke County in general, growth, right? So we're seeing a lot of growth coming at us from the east and the south, and that I was really concerned over the past few years how this growth and these controversial issues were going to affect maybe the makeup, the demographics of the county. That maybe more left-leaning people were going to move in, and how that might affect us. But from what I can tell, from every election, that hasn't been the case. We're holding the line, or getting more conservative, it seems like. And so I think people know Cooke County is one of the most conservative counties probably in the country, and I think that's attractive to people with those ideals.
Very good. So you mentioned a little bit about the, I guess, the infighting amongst the Republican Party, and we see that in a multitude of ways playing out at state, national levels. I happen to be the founder of the Cooke County Conservatives. We have made it a mission to have a good relationship with the Republican Party. We're one of your sponsors for your. So for those counties who have those sort of issues, where you have a lot of infighting, what advice would you have for them?
With us, we have several precinct chairs that are in the conservative group, and we have a good relationship, and I think that helps. We get along. We may not always 100% agree, but that's I have 4 other people in my house, and we have that problem all the time. But at the end of the day, we've got the same mission, and we get it done. And so it's just willingness. People have to have a willingness to want to work together, and figure out how to come to the table, get together, and actually work together. And we're really fortunate that we have that here.
Yeah. So the legislature's going on. There has been a lot of conversation about having closed primaries, things like ranked choice voting. Do you have any thoughts on either of those topics?
Yeah, the closed primary thing, that's a new thing. I don't, know how that's going to work. I get nervous with change when, things are seemingly going well. Republicans are winning. We're doing well. How does that change things? It might make it better. I don't know. But I do know at the end of the day, for that to work, the legislator, the government's going to have to support that idea, or who's going to pay for the primaries. Which the primaries are mostly supported by filing fees, but that does not pay for the whole thing. And the state budget does have to step up and pay. Elections are expensive. Ranked choice voting, boy, if you've sat through that in anything, that's just a long, drawn out. At the Republican convention, they didn't call it that, but that's what it sure seemed like to me, and it was wearing me out. So, I was not a big fan of that particular way of doing things, but I'm open to try. Say I'll try anything once.
So, is there any other topics that are going on down in the legislature right now that would impact your role here as the county chair?
Really, the main thing is going to be the closed primaries. That's anything that has to do with election law in general does change the way we do things, and so I'm hoping with the primaries they get that solved and it's clear what we're supposed to do. We go to election law training, which is a real humdinger, every other year with the Secretary of State's office, and they tell us what we can and can't do, and then there's kind of a follow-up Republican meeting after that. But at the end of the day, we got to do what the state says, or if we get sued, they're not going to pay for it. So, I told you how much this job paid, right? So I'm going to follow the law for sure. But so that's what I'm always watching and waiting on when it comes to this role, is how they affect election law in general, and then all the courts and the suing that goes on afterwards that usually causes a big mess all the way through a primary or two before we can get it settled.
Yeah. So, if folks here in Cooke County wanted to get more involved, how could they find out more about the party, and how could they get more involved?
Yeah, so you can follow us on our Facebook site. You can cookegop.com, and we have our events on there. You can email us at chair@cookegop. You can call us at 940-665-VOTE. Let us know you're interested in being involved, and I can assure you we will find something for you to do.
Well, very good. Well, Chris, thank you very much for taking a few minutes to do this. I know you're busy. I know you got a family. I believe you got some family activities. This is actually Easter weekend, so I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming over and getting a chance to talk to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everyone. Thank you for joining Talking Texas Politics with Calvin, and God bless you, and God bless Texas.